See, this guy? No? Okay. Now let's go to the other one. We'll just kind of... Alright. Is it Mark Anthony?
No. Yeah.
Is it Taboo?
Yeah.
Alright, Taboo it is. Alright, so let's start this off. Success. Somebody tell me what success is. What's success in your mind? Anybody?
It's when you prove people wrong and you do whatever you want to without nobody stopping you.
Without no one stopping you, so your drive, okay? When you reach a goal. What do you think of goals? Like what? What makes you successful in your own mind? Not my mind, your own mind. Is it maybe becoming a movie star? Getting a big house? What's success out there? Give me some things. Yeah.
Getting a college degree.
College degree. Okay. That's something good to strive for.
Doing whatever makes you happy.
Whatever makes you happy. Okay.
People looking up to you.
People looking up to you. Good, I like that. Okay. You got another one.
Being a role model.
Being a role model. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm sorry, you have one more?
Being recognized.
Recognized. By who?
By people. Like being recognized as somebody you want.
By your friends, by the media, by the public, by anybody. What's your idea?
By,
You want to be famous?
no, I want to be a nurse.
You want to be a nurse. You could be a famous nurse. All right, so I'm going to tell you what my idea of success was. Not my idea, my first realization of success. Anybody know what this is?
Yes.
What is that? A timer. Wow. Okay. You just made me feel really old, but anybody else?
Oh, look, and a cell phone. That means like
Almost like a cell phone.
beeper.
A beeper, right. Okay, so, I'm going to go to the next slide. So in high school, we started getting beepers. These were like the iPhones of today. This was the technology we had, folks. And this is how it worked for those that were born a little after I was, and I guess Miss Harris as well, right? See you nodding back there. So this is how it works. Someone would call your beeper, it's a pager, but the reason it's called a beeper is because once you call the number, it would go beep, 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 beep. And then you would just punch in your phone number, and the person would get it on the other end. Now what? Now you got to find a payphone to try to call that person back. All right? You got to have 50 cents, so on and so forth, call that person back. But when I got my first job, or when I started my career, I should say, not my first job, my boss issued me a cell phone. And this was huge because cell phones, it wasn't something that people had. So to have a cell phone, you made it big time. You were prestigious. But I had to be careful. By the way, this thing weighed about 15 pounds. Am I lying? This thing was huge. It was like carrying like a DVD player in your pocket. That's how big this was. And the antennas weren't really flexible, so they were pretty big. This was about 10 cents a minute, and you couldn't call from one state to another without paying long distance. So my boss said, hey Axel, here's your cell phone, but you know it's 10 cents a minute, and I'm going to watch every minute of it, so make sure you don't use it. So I wanted to be cool. So I kind of walked down throughout New York. Right? That's where I was born and raised. And I walked down and watched my watch. Before that minute came, I had to get off the phone, right? Because I don't want my boss getting upset with me once he gets that phone bill. But I kept the phone on just to look cool, thinking I'm on the phone, just talking to people, but no one was really there. But I look cool, so everybody else is like, wow, look at that guy on his cell phone. He's still on the phone 10 minutes later. That guy must have money. Meanwhile, there's nobody on the other end. But I look pretty cool doing it, okay? But that was my first measure of success, all right? As you get your career, you're going to find different ways of success. I heard a lot of people mention things about being a nurse and a lot of good things that we aspire to do. There's some other ways you can treat yourself, and I'm going to get how you get there. I treated myself recently. This is my little baby, okay? This was the trip my wife and I took with our two girls down, driving through Daytona Beach. So some people, anybody here like nice cars? Okay? Do you like a nice car when you get older? Right? How do you think you get these things that you want in life? You want a nice house? Anybody want a nice house? How do you get these things? Okay? It's through hard work, education, and commitment. And we're going to talk about that a little bit and how I got to this point in my life. Liz? All right, so where did it all begin for me? I grew up, and I know a few folks read my bio. I grew up in the South Bronx. Okay, it was one of 7 projects in the area, and it was a pretty tough time growing up. There's something that hit in the 80s, and did anybody ever heard of a drug called crack? Anybody ever heard of that?
Yeah, crack cocaine.
Crack cocaine, right. For us it was just crack. We didn't even get the cocaine part, just crack. Okay? And it was a pretty violent time. It was called a crack epidemic. And this drug just started hitting the streets. And it started causing a lot of problems, a lot of violence, a lot of people getting shot, so on and so forth. And my parents, like many other parents, they wanted obviously to keep me out the street and try to keep me away from what was going on with all the violence going on. And I'm going to roll to something now. My parents, prior to this, they came from Puerto Rico in their early 20s. They didn't know really any English at all. My father's first job was washing dishes, all right, and I'm not ashamed to say that. He worked very hard doing that. My mother worked as a seamstress. She worked a seamstress making dresses, okay? That's pretty much all she knew how to do, and you try to find whatever job you can to try to provide for your children. So my father worked washing dishes, and if there was food left over in the restaurant, then he would be permitted to take that home, and that would pretty much be, you know, food that we can eat, all right, for the night or the next day or for the week. And again, for some people, they may be ashamed to say that. I'm not, because that's just the hard work that it instilled in me. So I'm very proud to say that, you know, my parents came here and made the struggles and made it happen for me. Which I'm sure if you look back at your parents or your parents' parents, down the line someone has made some struggle to have you here today and give you the opportunity you have. Okay? So, Liz, if you would please. Does anyone know who this is?
Your daughter.
My daughter. Good guess. Anybody else? It's not me. My mom? Nope, but a good guess again. One more guess.
Your wife.
My wife.
Maybe his
Wow,
first wife. No, I'm
that
kidding.
would be cool, but it's not. No offense. You'll see why. Tell you who it is.
Jennifer.
Oh, you know who that is?
Yeah.
Okay, so why am I throwing her up there? All right. Well, the things were getting so out of control. There was a community center that opened up, and back then it was called Kips Bay Boys Club, and now it's politically correct, and now it's Kips Bay Boys and Girls Club. So this was pretty much all we had in the whole neighborhood, as far as like an outlet. Okay, an outlet, what I mean is just not being on the street, something to do, someplace to go. So J-Lo was from the same neighborhood I was from. Okay, she's about 3 years older than I am. And J-Lo's parents, just like my parents, this is where they sent us. So we were all in this Kips Bay together. And they had things like basketball, they had pool tables, they obviously had dance and singing, which is what she pretty much did. Okay? You have a
You
question?
had a chance to meet J-Lo's?
I will get to that. Okay? So J-Lo kept herself busy and obviously out of trouble. If I pull it, I think it's going to shut the whole thing down. So I'll just go without. You guys can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do without, but thank you very much. I appreciate it. So with that saying, it was a way that I kept myself busy. I just fell in love with sports. I played football, baseball, and basketball just all the time. Then I started running track. And that was an outlet for me, just to stay off the streets. And my parents just kept pushing me into that. And a lot of other parents kept pushing their kids into this. So it was a pretty good outlet for me and a way to stay away from the violence and stuff that was going on. Then, there was a couple turning points in my life. Now I'm going to fast forward to a freshman in high school, and I was, what would I have been, 13, 14 at the time. So I was 14 years old, and I started dating a girl, if you want to call it whatever, I'm a freshman in high school, right? And she was from the projects next to mine. Not far away, very close. Next project's right over. Went in front of her building, and I guess a couple of guys didn't like the fact that I was with a girl from their projects. So they came up to me, and asked me, what I was doing there. I said, hey, I'm hanging out with Denise, so on and so forth. And they said, well, you don't belong around here. And they put a 9mm and put it right in my chest. Okay? All right. They didn't pull the trigger. Okay? So obviously I'm still here today. But 1 second could have changed a lot of things and I wouldn't be here in front of you. 2 years later, across the street, I went to my yearly New Year's party at my cousin's house. And it was kind of a send-off because we were getting into the war with Iraq at the time. Everybody know what Iraq is?
Yeah.
Where's Iraq? Middle East, okay? So this was our first war with Iraq. A guy named Saddam Hussein at the time was in power. And we were going to go into a military conflict. And he was going to leave, so we weren't going to see him for a while. Well, just before being deployed, my cousin was murdered in the staircase. Okay? Just a block away from the same place where I had that gun put on my chest. So I lost my cousin. And it started making me view the neighborhood very, very differently. I didn't like what was going on. I felt that I needed to change. I knew that I wanted to get out and do something better with myself. And I started actually falling in love, believe it or not, with law enforcement. And it's kind of weird because growing up, being in the neighborhood, it was always like the cops weren't cool. We didn't like when the cops were around. But we'll just continue. Okay? But I started falling in love with law enforcement, and I decided that I wanted to go to college. And I really wanted to do something with law enforcement in college and get my degree. Go ahead. So I went to college. My father made it as far as high school. My mother made it as far as the 9th grade, and she had to leave school because she had to take care of her ailing grandmother, and she had to work. She was abandoned by her mother growing up, so it was just her and her grandmother. So when her grandmother got sick, now she had to change the tide, and she had to take care of her grandmother. So she had to leave school. But my father made it this far. An associate's degree, anybody know what that is? What is that? You had it first. A 2-year college, okay? So some people can get a degree. With a 2-year degree, there's different jobs that it makes you eligible for, the things that you can do, right? Okay? What's a bachelor's degree?
4 years. 4 years of college.
4 years of college, okay? So a lot of your big universities, your Rutgers, things like that, those are there for your 4-year degree. My brother made it this far. My brother was 9 years older than I am, okay? And I always had a big competition with my brother. My brother did this, I want to do this. Anybody like that with their sister or brother? You want to be better than your brother or sister, right? Yeah. Absolutely, all the time. I'm sorry? What? Oh, your sister's 1, so you can run faster than her, right? So you're ahead of the game. You're good, okay? So, with that said, I want to be better than my brother. I also want to be the first in my family, not just here in New York, but back in Puerto Rico. There was no one in my family that had a college degree, anywhere, okay? So I said, I'm going to be the first. And I went, I majored in accounting first to get my experience in business, and then I majored in criminal justice. So I had 2 majors, double major, and I got my college degree. But that wasn't enough for me. I then wanted to be the first one in my family to get my master's. What's a master's degree?
And you went to school for 4 years.
Another 2 years. Another 2 years. Okay? So that's another degree on top of that. Anybody here want to get their master's? Okay? It's a lot of hard work. Okay? I still have this left, folks. That's more school. But the higher degree, do you think you make more money or less money?
More money.
More money. Do you think you get a bigger house or smaller house?
Bigger house.
Bigger house. Do you think you can buy a nicer car or worse? Or nicer car. Okay? Exactly. Okay? You can provide for yourself and your family. So, I am now at this level. The folks in this class are going to be at what level? Right, very good. Okay? This is more money and more job opportunities. Okay? So just think about the connection right now with the degree you get and the job that you end up with. Okay? Liz, if you can go, please. So, this is a moment that I will never forget. This was, I look pretty young there, right? This was, I think this was my master's? I think this, can't tell because I didn't age much between that, but this was a special moment, both bachelor's and master's, not just for me, but it was a moment special that I can't, as a parent now, for my parents. Remember I kind of said that, how did they start off here? What did my father do? Dishwasher, right? My mother made what? Dresses, seamstress. So we went from my father holding a dish to me holding a master's degree. Big difference in one generation, right? Okay? So what do you think that moment felt like for my parents?
They were proud of you.
Amazing. How about my grandparents and my other family back in Puerto Rico that live on the farms and milking cows, right? Right. There's carry-ons back in Puerto Rico that they are sharing in that moment because all their struggles is what allowed me to get to this point, right? Just like everybody here in front of you. Okay? So, this. Then and now. This was right before I started my career. Do I look like a professional? Do I look like somebody that would sit at a board meeting? No? Okay. I'm going to actually tell you another thing about college that really, really helped me get to this point. And I'm going to talk about things that sometimes people don't talk about because they're a little sensitive. I matured a lot in college. In college, you're going to learn a lot about English and math and science. Okay? You're going to get a lot of education on top of what you're going to learn through high school. But there's a big maturity factor that's going to happen in college. You're going to learn a lot about your social skills. And I'm going to give you an example. Where I grew up, it was just all minorities. Okay? You were either Hispanic Latino or you were either black, which is now African American, whatever. That's pretty much it. The only Caucasian people that we saw, what's Caucasian? White person, okay? Pretty much the only Caucasian people that I saw growing up was my teacher, police officer, firefighter, my baseball coach, football coach, that's pretty much it. So, I started dating this girl in college. Her name was Trisha, okay? She was a beautiful girl, Irish girl, don't get jealous. Beautiful Irish girl. And Trisha was a sweetheart, but there was one thing I just couldn't stand about Trisha. She had this green jacket that just reminded me like of a World War II jacket, but from the enemy, something the enemy was wearing. I just couldn't stand this jacket. So I told Trisha, I said, Trisha, there's a lot of things I like about you, but this jacket, something's got to give. You got to get rid of this thing. So what do you think her response was to me?
No.
She goes, if you don't like it, buy me another one. It's all right, Trish. Now, Trish lived in the Upper East Side. Anybody heard the Jeffersons?
Yes.
What's the song for the Jeffersons? What is it? Go ahead. To what? To the East Side. So she lived right next to the Jeffersons. She was a Jefferson's neighbor, pretty much, right? So I figured that she had all this money just because she was Caucasian and she lived in the East Side of Manhattan. I'm a kid from the South Bronx. Of course she has money. And she looked at me and she goes, go buy me one. So I said, go buy yourself one. You got all this money. Go buy one. She goes, what makes you think that I have money? I'm just like you. I said, Trish, you live on the East Side. How do you not have money? Well, her response, because my father's the super and I pretty much live rent-free. That's why I live here. I'm on the same financial aid you're getting. I'm just as broke as you. And it made me realize something at that point. It was a sense of, I guess, ignorance. What's ignorance? Can anybody describe what ignorance is? Not knowing something, kind of assuming something, right? And it made me realize, wow, all this time, all these people just like me, and I'm just like them. And in my mind somehow, I associated success with Caucasian. because I never really saw many minority role models growing up. Does that make sense a little bit?
Yeah.
So one of the big reasons that I'm here today is to just show you it's a different world, and there's a lot more opportunity that people kind of try to pave the way for you. Okay? So success is whatever you make it to be, whether it's that nurse that you want to be, right? You want to be a nurse as opposed to just being famous. I gotta applaud that. I have to applaud that. Okay? So success is whatever you strive for internally. So, with that said, okay, you kind of know my story and how I got to where I am. There was obviously some tough times in my life, the loss of my cousin, things like that, but things happen for a reason, and instead of, I had a couple choices. When I had that gun pulled on me, when my cousin died, I could have been very spiteful, I could have been revengeful, I could have went and grabbed my own, got access to a weapon or whatever and try to get revenge, right? Or I can use that anger, if you will, that energy, and try to turn it into something positive. And that's what I try to do with it. And thankfully, those are decisions I made, because that's what has me here today. Married, successful, 2 beautiful children. Okay? So it can happen for anybody as long as you stay in that path. And education is really the key. So, any questions about me, J-Lo, or Taboo?
Did you meet her?
Okay. So, if you kind of figure, how old are you?
13.
13. All right. So J-Lo is about 4 years older than me. So, in this community center, pretty much the guys stayed on this side playing the sports, and the girls were on this side doing dance and music. So we were in the same place at the same time, but I never knew she was going to become J-Lo. She was just Jennifer back then. You have to understand that. If I knew she was J-Lo, I might have paid a little more attention. The second thing is, she's about 4 years older than me. So that's like you hanging out with a 9-year-old. You think that's going to happen? Anybody here hanging out with 8, 9-year-olds? Not many, right? Very few. So she was pretty much with her age group, her 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And I was still with the people she was dancing, but those that were more in my age group that I was actually in class with. So, but if I run into her, I'll make sure that I tell her you said hello. Was J-Lo pretty?
In her teenage years?
She was like any other teenager. I mean, there was, I guess yes. I'm not going to say she wasn't, but again, she wasn't J-Lo at that point. She was just another girl in the neighborhood. J-Lo was one of you. Just remember that, right? But she kept working hard, right? She didn't become famous just overnight. She worked at what she was good at. How did she start off? Does anyone know? She was what?
She was a background dancer?
Very good. She was just a background dancer on a show. Nobody knew who she was. Then she did a video.
She made movies.
Janet Jackson. She still wasn't famous. Then she started working hard. Started acting. Started making movies. Started singing. People said, "You can't sing. What are you doing?" She said, "I don't care what you say. This is what I want to do." And she kept pushing. So now, all of a sudden, she's so respected. All right? But again, her story is not like any different than anyone else that I grew up with or anyone else here. It's just she just happens to be famous, so people know her story. But there's a lot of Jennifer Lopez's all over the South Bronx that worked hard to make their story. They're just that nurse that you never hear about, saving lives, caring for people. That to me is more than J-Lo can ever do, right? You had a question?
In your biography,
Yeah.
you said that your cousins, when you made the yearly trip to El Campo,
Yeah.
they tricked you into looking at
With the
which
bull.
side was the Campo.
Yeah, that was a bad moment in my life.
Yeah, did they ever
I was about 7, 8 years old, and my family pretty much is farmland, things of that nature. And my cousins, I didn't know, they milk cows and they do all that stuff. And they said, "Hey Axel, go milk a cow." I said, "I don't know how to milk a cow." I said, "Just go, the cow will milk itself." whatever. All right, here's a kid from the Bronx just going to milk a cow. So I go, and I'm trying to get the animal, and they're behind this fence. They're behind it. So I'm the only one in there. And this animal, it was old, thankfully, but it starts, like get away from me. So I kind of fall down, and they're like, "Oh, go back up. It's friendly. Don't worry about it." So there I go. I try to get close, and knocking me down again. I'm like, "What's going? This isn't for me." I told my cousin, "It's not for me." Go again. Sure enough, I go third time. That's it. Bull had it. Turned around, looked at me, and just started coming after me. And I remember I said I ran track. Okay, that's probably one of the reasons I got in it. I ran as fast as I could, and I jumped right over the fence. It was like a wooden fence, so I just jumped right over. But it wasn't pretty, and they're all laughing, ha 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 ha. But if I would have been killed, it would have been a different story, right? Yeah.
How did you meet your wife?
How did I meet my wife? She stalked me. Actually, kind of ironic. It's through my brother, really. My brother and they both worked in banking down in Wall Street, and we moved out to the suburbs. When we wanted to get out of the Bronx, I lived there for about 19 years, and then we wanted to get out in the suburbs and move to the country. So we came to Jersey. That was pretty much the country for us. And we became next-door neighbors. And, she fell in love with me, and I said, "All right, I'll give you a chance." And that's pretty much still together 15 years now. I can't get that wrong, because if a man ever gets that wrong, you're in trouble.
Yes, we have 2 questions here.
Yeah. I'm sorry. In the back? Somebody had a question in the back?
Right here.
Young lady?
How did you feel when your cousin was killed?
How did I feel when my cousin was killed? I had a lot of emotions. Torn up. Devastated. I had just seen him, just at the New Year's party. And our fear was about him surviving his assignment in the war. We would have never thought that it would have been right there, right in the building, right on his floor, that he would have been killed. So, pain, a lot of hurt, took a long time. He's still with me today, and he's a positive influence in my life. Again, it's about turning negatives. Everybody's going to have bad things happen to them, folks. I'm sorry to give you the bad news. Things are going to happen, but it's what you do with that and try to turn that into a positive. So he's still with me today and always will be. Yes, ma'am.
Until today, what are you doing for your career?
Good question. What do I do for my career? So, when I started at UPS, I moved up the ranks, and I started running my own investigations unit, criminal investigations. Believe it or not, UPS actually has a criminal investigations unit. So I used to get involved with things like people shipping drugs, people shipping guns, things like that through UPS, things that are illegal. So prior to that, when I was in college, anybody ever heard of an internship?
Yeah.
What's an internship?
Someone who works for free.
Someone who works for free. Sometimes they're paid. Sometimes they're paid. Yeah, but I'm sorry, you want to touch on that?
They work for credits for school.
They work for credits for school. Sometimes you work for credit. Sometimes you work for free. Sometimes you get paid. So while I was in college, and by the way, I'm going to give you a little hint. Okay, if you want to really move up in the world, while you're in college, or even if you get a chance as a high school student, there's nothing better than doing an internship. Even if you don't get paid, there's nothing better than doing an internship. Because you're going to gain so much experience. You're going to see what you like or don't like, right? And you're going to make a lot of connections. So when I was in school, in high school, I did my first internship, and I worked for the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS. They're the ones that collect your taxes. And they also have an investigations unit, and that's when I kind of realized what I really wanted to do. Then when I was in college, I worked with the U.S. Marshals, and I also worked with the U.S. Postal Inspections. Okay? So you get a lot of experience with that. So when I went to UPS, I started running my own investigations unit, and to move up, where the money really is in operations. So I learned all about operations, and now I took over a $25 million piece of UPS that I'm responsible for. So just last year, anybody get a package from UPS?
Yes.
Okay? Last year, all your drivers reported to me. Okay? Now I moved into a different, on the other side, right over in Franklin, all the way up Basking Ridge, as far as you can go all the way up 287. So I pretty much ran all of Middlesex County, and now I run all of Somerset County. So it's a big operation. They basically give me $25 million, okay? And they say, run our business. You're responsible for all that. It's a lot of money, right? A lot of responsibility, okay? But there's a way you get there. It's through hard work. But you get paid very well for doing that, right?
Did you break up with your girlfriend after they pulled out a gun on you?
No. Actually, I had a classmate that lived in those projects, and he took care of it. I never had a problem again. So he just put out the word who I was, and nobody ever gave me a problem ever again there. So we broke up for different reasons, but. Anything else? Yeah.
Well, actually, this was a question for your wife.
That's okay.
How do you feel when that it said in his autobiography that Fox News Latino was trying to do a story about your